this works.
So right now, in the app, wow.
Oh.
Let's see. Not to freak you out, there are 83 people who say they're attending.
They're saying it. They're not. So I'm glad. I mean, so we can ask this person if this person can go a little other. I just don't want to be standing there.
Yeah.
I'm okay with moving.
Do you want me to go check with Joe?
No.
No, stay here?
Yeah, you please stay here.
Okay.
You're my
I'm your person. I'm your support person.
Yeah, you're my person as of now.
I will be your emotional support person.
You're the sun.
It's going to be fantastic. I mean, I think as long as, if you want me to sit back here and do your slides, if you would prefer to stand, because I'd be a little bit closer, or what would be better for you?
I'm not sure, but if I, at any point, if I think that it would be easier if you look at it, it's just then that I'll see.
Yeah.
The thing is, smile is like really, see, it's like goes everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wait for this person to come.
Okay.
This is the person who let us know where I have to stand.
Yes, I actually also do not know.
Hey.
Test.
You cannot sit in and I'll just have to reduce the speed.
Yeah, I'll try my best to translate.
Yes. It's just once it starts, then it's like that. But yeah. Last I'm 46, so it's just you just go with it.
Well, what I also taught in your staff is it's a silent care.
And you do it work, yeah.
You take it seriously. Like if you didn't care, you would.
Sorry?
Just a track from rooms to this feeling like we have the light, we have the window.
Yeah. I'm going to be speaking about post-traumatic growth. So the root of that is hope.
You know, the question that people ask me, like, what do you write in? Why you do that? I was struggling in the past, like, the neighborhood, so I didn't know how to respond to it.
Why do you do what you do?
Because it's something about not just the job, about meaningful life. Why we supporting that? Because we have all belief.
I actually also have a very spiritual, not religious, but a spiritual response to that. I believe that, we come with purpose. The soul actually has its own purpose. The spirit has its own purpose. For me, it has found me.
I listen to
Hinduism talks about this, that there is a spirit, there is, your spiritual growth. The more you start, getting aligned with your soul's purpose, Laura is sorry.
So I have this time.
Oh my God.
This is when we're 10 minutes to 5 minutes.
How much time do I have?
You have until 5 o'clock.
Oh my God. I have to speak continuous. I can do this,
I
right?
can do this, yeah. Yeah, you don't have to speak the whole
I'm not going
time.
to speak the whole time.
And so it can be very interactive as much as you want it to be.
Yeah.
And then people can submit the questions through the app. So I'll also do me as well.
So when I finish about 20 minutes, please show me this.
Yeah.
Because I would like to keep this not more than 20-25 minutes. And I want to keep 30-40 minutes just for, because that's when sharing of stories and this is more. But Elena and you also said, and Helen also told me that please share tools.
Yes.
And so this is going to be a lot about just about then this has been my experiences of using a tool or a framework. I would like to give examples. That I'm not doing the presentation.
So when do you want me to tell you? Like 30 minutes? 40 minutes?
Yeah.
All right.
After I talk for 30 minutes or 20 to 30 minutes, if you can just kind of do it, I'll know that I spoke.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I will give you a wave. Where would you like for me to be? Okay, I'll be over here. Yeah.
That one.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't have this person yet. This person
Yeah, I don't even know if there is a person.
Then I can do anything.
Then you can do your thing. I feel like people comment in the chat if there's problems with tech. So I think if there's I'll also monitor the chat just to make sure there's no complaints.
Oh,
about the
okay.
video.
No, is that so? I don't have to stand like in front of whatever.
I don't think so.
I don't
as
think
long
so.
as I think that's probably for them to see your slides, and then also you just need to make sure that you use the mic because the people online won't be able to hear you.
Oh, I'm just going to say I'm so little.
Yeah, the only way they can hear you online is
Sure. While I'm that's what Bruce says. It's like I'm going to stand back and just take photo. He wants to do something else. So I'll just take him photographs and
Do you want the crowd photos as well?
anything. Just you can just do like a.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. That's fine. I understand.
Maybe one with this other character.
Yeah.
Then whenever you find time.
Okay, I'll sit right here so I can
Okay.
snap photos of you. You have your water.
Oh God, I'm nervous. Sorry. Should we start? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I told to use the mic.
Yeah.
I keep feeling I'm loud enough, but yes.
It's on.
Okay. Come. It's like very empty. Sit here. Come here. Come. Is this disturbing you? It's okay? Yeah. Anyways, as of now, I'm the one who's nervous. So, hi everyone, good evening. Can I request you to just close the door while you're walking? So that we can, I will remove this. Come here, there's space here. Remove my bags.
Hi, I'm Uma. Thank you very much for coming and attending this session. It means a lot to me. I'm a little nervous as of now, but I'm sure as this goes ahead, I will feel better. This session, I just told you, you're my person. So every time I'm a little thing, I will be looking at. Okay. So today's session is on community aftercare and how is it linked to post-traumatic growth among survivors of violence. I'm a psychologist by education. I practiced clinical psychology for about 5 years, and I was making money. I was doing okay. I was doing quite well, but I worked with army veterans, and that time I was about 24, 25 after my master's, and something about my clinical practice. And I was just speaking to somebody. She was asking, what do you say when somebody asks you, why do you do what you do? I don't know. I don't know, but one thing. So I was doing quite okay in what I was doing. But there was something that was not okay. In the sense that I just kept feeling that I work at a hospital, I have a chamber, people come to me, I'm a therapist. But I don't think this is the purpose of my life. I kept feeling this. And at 24, 25, you're not very sure why do you keep feeling this. But I think I wanted to work in the community. I didn't want to wait for people to be prescribed to come to me. I just knew that it had to be just turned on its head. I had to go somewhere to meet with people with whom I would like to work with. So my foray into community-based, ma'am, why don't you come here? My foray into community-based work was just a chance. I hadn't applied anywhere, but like I was telling you, I think if it's meant to be, there will be opportunities, and then you'll have to jump. So I jumped knowing nothing about trafficking, knowing nothing about human slavery, in the sense that reading and knowing what happens in your country and all of that as a university student happens. But apart from that, so today's session, I've really kept it on tools and frameworks and approaches that I have used in my work. What worked, what didn't work. I will first go through, in the first 20, 25 minutes, I will go through all of this. And then it's a 1-hour session, so I've told Nora, she will let me know when 30 minutes are over. And then I would like to open this up. And I would like to share, I would like to hear your stories or any examples. And if you have questions on, a particular framework, I would like to give examples of what didn't work. And what I tried to borrow from very mainstream, I'm a clinical psychologist. So I've tried to marry the approaches from mainstream clinical psychology into community mental health approaches, making it into psychosocial approaches. And so let's just dive into this. There were some people who need translation. Okay, so that's taken care of. Is there anybody who needs a Thai translation? She's okay. 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 So
Can I just say, look, camera got moved and you're no longer in shot for the online viewers.
Oh, where do I have to?
It's right here. We got it.
Oh, this is.
I did that.
So, where do I need? I'm okay here. No.
Joe, can she move around or?
Yeah, you're fine. You can move around. Just
I
the
can-
whole area. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so I'm starting with what is trauma. I'm not getting into the definition of trauma, the clinical definition of trauma. I am talking about, when we talk about trauma, we put down a list of things, the horrible things, the terrible things that happened to a person. But we often do not put down a list of things that could have happened. Because of the traumatic incident, the experience, some of the good stuff that was supposed to have happened doesn't happen. So, Bilkis wanting to be to earn money for her family as the eldest daughter, helping her dad, them getting out of debt, her having a career in Bombay, her younger brother and sister going to college, she earning, she doing A, B, C, all of that, all the good things that she had imagined, never happened. So when I first saw Bilkis's file, it was a list of all the terrible things. So she had PTSD, her scores on several tests were A, B, and C. She had HIV, she had contracted HIV, so it was a list of things, all the things that had gone wrong. And every time we talk about trauma, we don't talk about the things that could have happened, have not happened, and that's also a list to make. Because that's where the pain, the loss, the despair actually depends a lot on that also, things that did not happen. And like I say here, the community-based aftercare for survivors that's why very, very significant. Because we don't only work on the harm repair. So once the survivor has been rescued, gone through the institutional care system, gone through the physical and a little bit of mental health facilities, services, and once she's back into a community of her choice or his choice, this is the phase that's actually the turning point, because now you need to work not only on the repair, you now need to work on hope. So why? What is community care? Most of you in this room probably know it already. But I will just quickly take you through the community care models that have designed and we've worked with. So it is very survivor-centric. It is survivor-centered. It takes place in the whole community of choice. So there have been survivors who've gone back to their home communities, and then there have been survivors who decided not to go back to the home communities and have chosen a particular city or another village to go back to. So it happens within the survivor's own community, definitely not in institutional care. Long-term institutional care actually has effects of incarceration. So we can have another conversation on that when we're doing the Q&A, but I'm now talking about communities of choice. Of course, it is designed to restore dignity, agency, connection, all of that. And the community aftercare model that we follow, it's based, it's accessible to survivors, it's led by the individual, it's customized, it looks at integration of, it's a very holistic approach, looking at integration of various components which I will be talking about, and it definitely looks at agency building. And there's a little bit about the traditional institutional care, aftercare model that we have in India. 35, 40 years back, when there was, the survivors of trafficking would be first rescued, put into a shelter home. I have worked with survivors who've been in shelter homes for 9 years, 11 years. They were rescued at the age of 12, and by the time she's 22, she's forgotten the address of her home. So even if they wished to send her back, she only said that my house was near a pond and a tree. I don't remember anything else. So the institutional care, the shelter home, length of duration of shelter home is something that I have studied, and I have, in India, this used to be a extremely prevalent form of aftercare. Even today, India doesn't have a trafficking in persons law. It's a law that is comprehensive for labor trafficking, sex trafficking, and any form, whenever you stand up to talk about recovery and rehabilitation models for survivors of trafficking, the first response is, oh, so how many shelter homes are you running? There is the need for a transition shelter is something that I'm not denying, but it is community-based care, which is imperative. The reason trafficking and slavery-like conditions are relational traumas. You get cheated, groomed, sold, bought in a relationship or by another human being or human beings. So it's a relational trauma. The healing has to be relational too. It cannot be about this person living in a shelter home. And I'm not saying that you don't form relationships in shelter homes, but these are not communities that you will be living in for the rest of your lives. So hence, community-based aftercare is what I'm going to be talking about. There are about 7 things that I will look at. And like I said, some of them are borrowed from clinical psychology or mental health, psychosocial or social psychology, and how I have weaved it into the community aftercare model. Mimi, is the pace okay? Okay. So the first thing, one of the very, very important things that any work, any psychosocial aftercare work needs to do is scaffolding. It's a word that is used in the construction center, in construction sites. You have these bars and frameworks where people just stand before you start breaking the wall or painting. This is exactly, it means the same thing, human scaffolding. Build the scaffold and it shows its temporary support. Now the word which is operative here is temporary. Somebody in the morning today talked about the savior things of NGOs. I think it was in the panel of the lived experiences. And so that's when scaffolding has not happened, when the NGO has forgotten or chosen to forget or hasn't done it consciously, but the scaffold has become permanent. So it refers to the temporary support. It is from one person helping another person to grow and navigate the challenges, and there is concrete objective and goal for this scaffolding. And once those goals are achieved, that support is withdrawn. This happens very much in classrooms, the teacher-student. So I'm bringing this in because usually when you start your work with survivors, it's an adult-adolescent, adult-child relationship. So the scaffolding is extremely important. It starts with assessing where is this individual, where is this person in terms of his or her current needs and capabilities. And then you tailor the support. Relationships are about energy. Healing relationships are about energy. So the encouragement and motivation is not only through tasks and tools, it is the mirroring of your energy. So as a care worker, in all my trainings, the first thing I talk to caregivers and social workers and I tell them, when she or he has nothing else to depend on, the brain will unconsciously mirror your energy. If you have nothing to offer, that's fine. we have mirror neurons which mirror the behavior, thoughts, and we don't realize this. So by energy, I'm not saying that social worker has to always be like hyper. I'm just saying, you know, it's the nature of the energy will get mirrored in his or her thinking, feeling, and expression. And that's what I mean by encouragement and motivation. I'm not saying that you will give big talks. Feedback. Extremely important. The significance of giving feedback. Clear, structured, and relational feedback. Feedback on tasks, processes, as well as the relationship of trust. And to talk about recovery, rehabilitation, reintegration as a journey. It is a journey. Life is a journey. So it is a journey where I, as your caregiver, and you as the person in charge of, you know, reshaping your life or trying to change the ending of this story, of your own story, there's a shared responsibility. And this, the impact of scaffolding is something, you know, it will increase confidence. If done well, it will increase confidence, it will increase a little bit of on building competence on the tasks that the survivor has often put as his or her goals. It supports long-term independence so that you can then remove the scaffolding and the building still stands newly painted and repaired. That's the aim of scaffolding in any community care program. One of the most important things that we look at is case management. It is called restorative. There is a particular framework right at the corner, right-hand side, you will see. This framework, many of you may already know this framework. It's a care and control framework. Support, care, nurture on one side, and there is control, discipline, boundary setting on the other. This is a very important framework actually in parenting. In clinical psychology, as a therapist, when I was looking at family counseling, this was one of the tools that we used to use. How is the culture in your family? And we would map that. This is exactly something we need to do in community care. Once the survivor is back, if you think, oh my God, she's a victim and you know, she's gone through hell, so now let me just offer unconditional support, it doesn't work. You are not the caregiver or the social worker is not the parent. Even in parenting, at the age of 14, 15, 16, you know, if the survivor is an adolescent girl or a boy, there needs to be disciplining structures. Because discipline and control give us structure to, you know, you consolidate, bring clarity, and achieve it. Then move on. Consolidate, bring clarity, move on. So the support and the care and the nurture is very important, and you will see the combination. I have been in spaces where I have seen there is neither support nor control and nor any kind of discipline, and the social worker has told me, oh, I have a very laissez-faire style of managing this case. It's not laissez-faire, it's neglect. Neither are you invested in the nurturance of this person, nor are you invested in discipline, helping the person to make sense of what's happening in a very structured manner. So this balance, and we cannot only always be in that quadrant with, you know, where there's absolute balance of, that's an idealistic situation that doesn't happen all the time. But this framework is often, it's very, very important for caregivers as well as the survivors to map where they are. The two of them sitting together and looking at the forms of care, support, the service, the encouragement that you receive, and what are the kinds of ways in which I am being able to use structure, discipline, and then you see where your relationship is. permissive caregiving doesn't lead to competent, survivors feeling competent about themselves. So we have a case management system, and this case management system is now, it started with, in 10 years back it used to be on paper. I mean, every survivor would fill it along with a social worker, and today, after 10 years, we now have it on an app. I have one of the survivor leaders here. I mean, she now has formed her own organization, and Sunita, and they run this app themselves. So when they are doing their case management form, she is able to see, okay, these are the areas. And I was having a conversation with Shannon earlier on this, and then they rate themselves, they score themselves, they talk about what is this particular area, that whether it is housing, whether it is education, whether it is livelihood, whether it's a legal victim compensation that she has to fight for, whether it is mental health support, whether it is leisure. Actually, we have a component which is on leisure and play. Do I find time, space, people to play with? Even if I'm 24, we all need play. And in many case management tools, this recreation, leisure, play, it doesn't feature in case management. It's so important. So the case management approach, restorative case management approach is one. Okay, I've just put snapshots of, so one of the biggest goals, and maybe this is because I'm a mental health professional, I think one of the biggest component that I keep developing new tools or borrowing, adapting, are tools on well-being and resilience. That is the goal. That is a primary goal while I'm working with a survivor of trafficking. So, so for example, there's a complete section on shame resilience that we work with. Shame is externally induced. It's a horrible feeling that you don't want to feel, but it's externally induced. Survivors of sex trafficking have very high levels of shame. Shame can come from various places. There are norms, rules, practices, rituals in my community, in my society that I have broken. And I was trafficked, and now I'm ashamed of that. Society keeps reminding me, we told you, don't fall in love at this age, or don't believe in guys at this age. Women, girls, good girls in our community don't do this. Good girls don't have to earn. Don't think of yourself as a boy. Certain kinds of rules of the community I have broken. Hence I was trafficked. Now I am back in my community. I am shamed for it. One source of shame. Another source of shame could be, I have a thing about myself. I have a narrative about myself. This is who I am. I'm a very kind person, for example. And I sometimes may do acts of unkindness. So for example, it was Asma's husband who beat her back in blue and then trafficked her and all of that. And now Asma is back and she wants to punish this guy. And so she's filed an FIR against her trafficker, who happens to be her husband. Now, in her mind, Asma is a very devoted wife, kind woman, obedient daughter. That's the psychological identity that Asma holds. She values it. Now, she's doing something which is completely clashing with her values. Causes a lot of shame. When you're removed from the situation, it's like, why? I mean, she's, this is legal. She's doing what she's doing. All of that is fine, but I've done these studies on internalized stigma, when you stigmatize yourself. So one of our core areas of work is working on shame resilience. Shame thrives on silence and secrecy. 2 pillars of shame. So our shame resilience work then looks at breaking silence, breaking secrecy, bring it on the table. How do you work with shame in gentle, compassionate ways? You ask questions in these. I'm just giving you a couple of, you ask questions in these, when we do these labs and sessions with survivors. What is the nature of my shame? What makes me feel shameful? Do I have somebody to share this shame with? If my shame were a person, how would he or she look like? So there are workshops on shame resilience. Similarly, this is the triad, the choice, control, and safety triad. This is a very clinical, in clinical psychology also, this is the triad we work with. When somebody is traumatized and triggered, it is usually the loss of one of these things, choice, control, and safety. And then we work even in the community care models. We look at what the individual care plans, what I just talked to you about, the individual care plans actually maps the survivor on this. Which of these are as of now the most, the survivor is not being able to access or have resources. Either she's not being able to make, what are the kind of choices she's not being able to make? Where does she feel loss of control? How unsafe is she feeling? To have these conversations. I'm not saying that this framework or this tool has to be presented to a survivor. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, as a caregiver, as the organization who's working with the survivor, you will have to create this story. You will, if I were to tell Sunita that this is what happens when you go through a traumatic experience. This is not only about you. This is what happens. And you are experiencing this. So as much as the trauma is yours, it is also a phenomenon. And it helps the person who's traumatized to remove himself or herself for a few degrees. And then work on, okay, so which is that area? So like I said, there are concrete areas of livelihoods, citizenship documents, education, legal aid. Done, that's great. But these are areas that we need to have these conversations, and we have designed, we have at hand very simple psychosocial tools to have these conversations with survivors. So for example, the I am, I have, I can model. Very simple. I am is on identity. Who am I? What is it that I love about myself? What are the areas that I can depend on myself for? It's about my identity and how comfortable or confident I am with it. The second is I can. This is about my capabilities, competencies, skills. And the I have is about resources. Do I know where to go when I am at a loss? Do I know at 11:30 p.m. at night if I am feeling very anxious or I'm very, very sad? Do I have 3 people? And these are named in my notebook. Do I have 3 people I can just call? I have is about resources. It's not only helplines, it's people. Because like I said, trafficking is a relational trauma. We need to build relational healing techniques. Many survivors will say, I am done with human beings. I've had people telling me, Didi, bas kar. I don't want to depend on, just leave me. I don't want to depend on another human being in this lifetime. So in addition to getting her victim compensation, actually my work, the social worker's work is building this. I don't want to work with human beings. I don't want to deal with human beings for the rest of my life. At the age of 16. The well-being star. Again, it's a part of our case management model. And every quarter, in the beginning it's every quarter, and then it becomes 6 monthly, and then it's an annual thing. So as the survivor grows, we grow with her as her team. And then, you know, these things that these different kinds of frameworks that we use, the tools that we use, they are not designed like this, huh? I didn't have I'm not good at using Canva and stuff like that. So they are all made into like very visually game-like kind of things. There is only one reason we are doing this. Survivors of any kind of trauma, and I'm not only talking about trafficking, survivors of any kind of trauma, and especially sexual violence and trafficking for sexual exploitation, there are two things that completely get damaged. There is a constant feeling of, okay, the words are unpredictability and uncontrollability. When I'm in a room locked without windows and I don't know, and the door is locked from outside, and I don't know how I have reached here, I have no control in me reaching here. So I have no control over, I can go to the loo when I want to. I can have water when I want to. I can open a window when I want to. I have no control. And the other is unpredictability. I do not know what is on the other side of this door. Who will walk in next? Will the person beat me? Will the person rape me? Will I now be dragged and taken somewhere else? Will I ever get to see people? So it is the uncontrollability and the unpredictability that we are trying to help her with, or help him or her with. These are tools. These are mere tools and frameworks. But this will be deployed, used, implemented with her by the social worker team, by caregivers around her. So basically all of this, all these tools are just to restore back control and predictability. We take this so much for granted. Maybe not at the Arath conference, because over here everybody's come with everybody, but usually control and predictability is something we wake up in the morning and we know. You know, these are things. Very, very important component of the aftercare model. The me, we, and us approach. This is used a lot also it has been used a lot in social movements, justice movements. We've adapted it. I'm going to wrap up. So it's very, very, it's self-explanatory. You talk about the self, you talk about your group, and then you talk about the ecosystem. And why the ecosystem? We need to have conversations with survivors when they are, if you're looking at victims, survivors, leaders, and then I'm going to talk about the ecosystem with the leaders. No. We need to start talking to victims of trafficking about the ecosystem. And I'll tell you why. Because it is a systemic violation. The child protection system was completely absent or defied when I was trafficked at the age of 13 or 14. So systems have not worked. So when we are looking at peer solidarity, peer, mobilizing survivors, bringing them into groups, we are looking at all of this, we're looking at mutual support, shared experiences. They learn from each other. So I don't want to get very detailed because this is something many of you already work on. If you want more information on this, I'm happy to have conversations. We've got federations and alliances now building movements, bringing survivors together, just passing the mic. And the me, we, and us, that's something that survivors map themselves. A lot of information given, yes, but how do we consolidate this information to empower me as an individual, to empower we, my tribe, my people who've gone through similar experiences, and empower us, the ecosystem in which the trafficking happened and now the healing is happening. This is, if not the most important, this is a tough one. To talk to victims of injustice, oppression, and violence, to talk to them about power and the power dynamics. If you're an NGO, if you're a non-profit, if you're a government duty bearer, if you're a lawyer, if you're a police person, whoever you are, we need to start talking about power dynamics with survivors right from the beginning. Because what has happened is an abuse of power. And the system, the structures in the system have allowed it to happen. So I've just given one of the ways in which we play, we have these exercises and games on the drama triangle, which talks about the power of the victim. Victims have a lot of power. Victim power. And that's deployed in a very, very different manner. And then there is a rescuer, which is usually the NGO. The social worker is given that, like that stage of the rescuer, savior, whatever. And then there is a oppressor, the persecutor, the accused, which is the trafficker and the system and all of that. Now, when we do these, we use a lot of psychodrama. Power is it's very tangible and it's very intangible at the same time. So how do you talk about power dynamics, the flow of power? So when people say that, I mean, how do you work on this? There are techniques. You use psychodramas, you use role plays, you use case simulations. Of course, it is all built with this, you have to see who your survivors group is, and it's built like that. And one of the things, and I want to add an example here. So we do the drama triangle, we see how each of them, the survivors are feeling in each of the spots and all of that. One of the things that doesn't come in this drama triangle, and I wanted to draw a quadrangle and I could not. Like I said, I didn't know. So one of the things that I always now bring in, there's a fourth point actually. And usually people don't talk about that. And that's the point. If that turns, things will turn. And those are the bystanders. In the drama triangle, if you were to bring the fourth, actually in the drama quadrangle, the fourth point is bystanders. They can be allies, they can be observers, they can be whoever. But when bystanders do not remain bystanders and are dragged into this, the drama triangle will break. It will have to break. And it happens because when a bystander starts talking, so for example, there was one of the survivors, she was coming back into her village. She was not allowed to enter the premises of the village. The village panchayat, who's the head man, said that this is a clean village. You're a dirty girl now. So when you're coming in, so this is River Ganga, the Ganges. Now this is a pot full of the holy water. You please take a bath in front of everyone. We are all standing here. So there's like a line. And the village, about 300 people are standing this side and she's standing on that side. And now he's told her, just pour this entire pot of water, it's holy water. And once you're cleansed and clean, wear your clothes and then you come back. We were waiting for you to come back home. But you just have to do this. So here the victim is clear. The panchayat and his like 3 or 4 of them, that's clear. They're the, very, very oppressive people. They're the NGO who's standing there, and they're like, is it necessary? Is it okay? So, they're waiting with like a shawl, like a sari. And as soon as, she's like done that, and they'll just go and wrap her and, take her. And I was thinking, what happened to the 275 bystanders? If the 207, okay, forget 207, if 100 of those 275 bystanders had decided that we don't want to be bystanders anymore. This is our village girl. She was born and brought up here till the age of, 14, 15. We're not going to allow this to happen. And they just go and stand with her and say, okay, then all of us are going to take a bath together. And that just, we dramatized this. We did it through a psychodrama. So, you have to talk about the flow of power. And how will you turn this around? How do we help survivors and ourselves? Social workers and organizations often, and I don't want to offend anyone here, but how do you talk about power imbalances, inequities, without feeling very guilty and accused? I mean, I don't have to keep saying, oh, I'm so privileged and hence no. I have been a victim of power abuse at my end also. Just because I'm English spoken, I speak English and I'm educated, doesn't mean I never feel like a victim. So, how do you have conversations about power and feel helpless sometimes, whoever you are in the room, and just having these conversations, talking about how the power, it acts as barriers, power imbalances, what are the kind of barriers, how does it promote justice? Conversations about power are very necessary, and usually through drama, it works very, very meaningfully. This is something you guys have already heard in the morning. We know why survivors' leadership is absolutely mandatory. I mean, and leadership is not about them taking the mic and talking. I think after this, maybe we can have a conversation about what leadership means, because I would love to understand how, I have heard many people saying that lived experiences, people with lived experiences as leaders, it's a very trending thing now. Sorry to use this, but everybody is talking about this, but what do we mean by leadership, and how are we looking at co-travelers with survivors? I think that is something that we could have like a interactive conversation instead of me just. And finally, post-traumatic growth. You'll find loads of material on the net, so I'm not going to talk to you about what post-traumatic growth is. But it's never a before and after. Never. I was like this, and then the traumatic incident happened, and I'm like this now. And now I'm like this at stage 1. In the month of May, I was rescued. In June, my therapy and all the blah 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 started. Aftercare started, and now in December, I'm like this. It's not like this. It doesn't happen like that. Like I said, it's a journey, and these are the 5 things that we work with. There are many post-traumatic growth models, approaches, 5 things that we are looking at, and we've done studies with we started our pilot studies last year on survivors who've gone through the case management and leadership programs with us, and wanted them to start telling their stories about what has shifted. And I've put it in order of that. On this side, on the right side, 60% of this, more than 60% of the survivors talked about new possibilities. And this is something that all survivors who worked with NGOs who try to work as allies and supporters, survivors have talked about. I never imagined I would get an opportunity like that. I never thought that I would be a speaker, so and so and so. The possibilities of who I can be, what I can do, the I am, the I can, the I have, all of that, they'll talk about. And it's really heartening. But let's not get stuck there. It feels really nice when survivors talk about, so even in the study, when about 68% of them talked about something. So they have new opportunities and possibilities. It's lovely, but there are 4 other pillars, and when the personal strength, personal transformation stories, so all of this was done very qualitatively. We tried to measure this through qualitative storytelling. I still don't have the, so there's a tool probably I have, but I don't have the, how do you, I want to make the storytelling of this a little more concrete. Basically, I want to do this through visual storytelling, and those are some ideas I have, not very concrete, but yeah. So it's beautiful, the kind of stories of, in the spiritual growth section, for example, there were just 22% I think who talked about spiritual growth, and I was like, oh my God, why? I was like, that could be, as a psychologist for me, that was like, I started asking them, why do you not feel, what kind of things are still barriers? And I had made, for each of these pillars, I had made a group of sentences which they had responded to. Now this group, which is the spiritual growth group of sentences, and I was doing like focus group discussions with them, and charchas, these are conversations, informal community conversations. And some of the survivors said that I'm not religious by nature, and I don't see the difference between spirituality and religion. In my family, it's the same. So I don't understand, and I don't believe in religion. And I don't want to be a religious person, because when you're a religious person, this is what happens. And she gave some examples of what her brother had done in the name of religion.
Spiritual views.
And so she had this entire thing. So I realized maybe the sentences, the way I have framed it, still not, it's, this concept of spirituality and religion. And I'm not saying that religious growth is not necessary or not something that I don't wish on survivors. That's up to them. But there are many girls I know who've now decided that I don't believe in a God. At this point of my healing state, I don't believe in a God. So at this point of time, I'm going to give it a 0 reading. So they're giving it a 0. So we are having conversations. This is something that we've started only last year. I worked with this around 500 of them in the last 8 years, and it was just, it's a work in progress. And I'm going to keep looking at doing these small studies and looking at ways of how do we capture the post-traumatic growth. Because there is a wealth of information, not only for social workers, but for policy makers, on what really change is. And if that's the change we are looking at, what do we need to do now? And community care is something that all of this, what I've talked about, has to, and I believe this, it has to happen in the community of my choice, because then I'm ready to change. I'm ready to heal. And this is something that I really, it's really resonates with me a lot. Because we may keep putting our budgets, at least in the Indian government, we may keep putting our budgets into shelter homes. Those are cages at the end of the day. We will not hear survivors singing and making music if we have cages. We need to plant gardens and parks and forests and trees, and we will hear the birds. Those are our communities. Thank you. Sorry. I'm just gonna. Yeah. Sure.
So we have about 20 minutes left for some questions, and I know that we want it to be interactive. We also have just as many people joining online as we do in person, so we want to make sure that people online have an opportunity to ask their questions and have those be responded to as well. So we have a couple quick questions in the app, but if anyone else has questions that you'd like to ask, we invite you to please add them into the app, because that means that people who are joining online also have the opportunity to share their questions. One of the questions that has come up so far is, what in your experience are the 3 most significant challenges in facilitating peer support programs?
Can we have this conversation?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if many of you probably run survivors leadership programs or empowerment programs, would you want to share about what do you think are the barriers or challenges of bringing in young people and putting them in groups and running peer support programs?
The peer support is often because trafficking is happening to the most vulnerable. They come from communities that are not particularly safe, so their peer support. One of the biggest issues we deal with being re-trafficked, that they are the bad girl of the family because they're the one in the community that didn't go back, that wanted to build a life.
So it's a kind of a stigma.
More than a stigma, it's forced to go back. More than a stigma, it's actually guilt placed on them to not go back. They should go back to sex work. They can earn more doing that and support the family. So it's the community forcing them to, yeah.
Okay. Peer support group বানাতে গেলে সবচেয়ে বড় চ্যালেঞ্জ কি হয়? 3টে চ্যালেঞ্জের কথা বলেছি। This is in Bangla. Would you like to try? Huh? Thinking. Okay. Okay. I think again, list of things are coming to my mind. For me, the first one that usually doesn't get addressed is space. Sometimes, you have a plan on how you start the support group, and then there are 3 or 4 survivors themselves who will say, like, I'm going to do this, and I'll get her, and I'll get 5 more, and slowly. But I think for me, the hardest thing has been, sometimes I felt I have moved too fast in my endeavor to have survivors come together, build it together, move together, and have a support space. I have moved too fast, and I'm trying to put the blocks of the Jenga very quickly, and it backfires. So that's one of the challenges. Second is support groups. If it's in a particular same area, then language doesn't remain a difficulty. But because I work across the country, and India has God knows how many languages. So one of the biggest problems that I have faced in creating national federations and alliances has been language. We've bypassed that. We've navigated through it through translations and using tools, tech tools and all. Having said that, sometimes when you're talking about something really like a spiritual metaphor, in Bangla, I'm in Bengali or a Hindi, I'm giving a metaphor. It's not a concept, it's a metaphor, and I don't know how to translate that. Or the translator is at, like, what is this? What do you want me to translate? So sometimes I do feel language, with all its help, some of the deepest layers of translation becomes a difficulty. These two are very, very critical. I can't think of a third one, which is... There are very simple ones, like, for example, like stigma. I did a stigma study in about 10 years back, 8 years back. The kind of stigma, whether it is a public stigma or institutional stigma, so anticipated stigma, stigma by association, the various kinds of stigma, even internalized shame and stigma. So to work with stigma, so there's in India we have the corporate social responsibility funds, budgets for that. And every time you're talking about this part, that I want to start an anti-stigma program, and I want to look at the self and the me, we, and us, and I'm looking at a program which, and I'm like, so what is the category of the funding that you want? And I'm like, okay, mental health, this will come under mental, but what about the medication then? There's nothing in your program which talks about how will the stigma go down. We have to do a before and after. And it's like so I think working with things like a stigma, one of the survivors had once told me, it was a beautiful Bangladeshi survivor she was, and she had said she didn't want to, she was taking a lot of time to be a part of her peer group. And I kept asking her, that, Zulekha, why don't you come for this meeting? Just come drop it for 10 minutes. And she would just be silent and quiet. And one day we were having a conversation and we were walking back to her from the center. I was walking back to her home. I said, I'll walk you back. And while we were walking, I asked her, how does this feel to you? How does this entire experience of being sold in India, in Pune, and then that is like 5,000 miles away, and then you come back, and then you're in this village, and so how does all of this? How do you feel about all of this? And she said, it feels like a hair in my mouth. I was gobsmacked, by that answer. I was thinking, she's going to say, and I was like, And then she said, do you know how it feels? I said, yeah, I have had that experience. She said, it's a hair. Nobody can see it. Even if I tell people, pull it out, they can't see anything in my mouth. I am not being able to pull it out of my mouth. It's so invisible. But I'm so uncomfortable all the time. So yeah, I think some of the barriers sometimes are like the hair in the mouth.
We have another question from the audience, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Another person has shared, there are excellent tools for therapeutic group work and organizations that are working with survivors, but how do you cultivate this in the actual community where most people are not trauma informed and may not be healthy?
I think we need another breakout session. Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. We do these programs, and when we design a program, like I said, there are components for community. So for example, in the anti-stigma work, contact programs, they're called, like for example, contact programs to reduce stigma. Whoever has written that question, I will be able to see that, Laura?
Yes, you can see
I
it.
will respond to you specifically. We can have a Zoom call, because there are about, I can talk about the 5 or 6 things that we do in community building on many of these tools, especially with stigma and power. 2 things that I really think, so we are done with, I am done with awareness generation programs. I mean, you can be very well aware and keep the biases on without changing a damn thing. So yes, so we use some community-based, with the community programs on anti-stigma and what does power do to us, and everybody understands that. Everybody. So even the drama triangle and the drama quadrangle, we do have programs. I will set up a virtual Zoom meeting with whoever the person is. Fabulous question. It's much tougher than working with 500 survivors or 5,000 survivors. That module is very clear. The community-based module, we have modules, we have programs, designs, but they have to be far more creative, and it's far more frustrating. It's exhausting. And then we have one change maker in the community who then becomes like a North Star. And then suddenly so I've worked for 9 months, 10 months with a particular group, nothing happens. One block development officer does one random but very strategic action, and then suddenly 89 block development officers, I can do this. He thinks that, well, it's a competition for them. For me, self-help groups of survivors of trafficking in that district, done. So sometimes it's not all in my head and I have not planned. Sometimes there are allies who also just suddenly emerge and then they help. More questions?
Yes. Another question is, how can we work on community-based aftercare for survivors whose community is not safe for them? For example, in cases of sexual abuse where the perpetrator is someone from the community.
I think this is, I don't have a one answer to this, So if it's the family, then we've often done alternative foster family, kind of we've used that. There have been survivors who've opted for community-based group living. Anybody has any ideas for this or things that you've tried? Yes.
So hello, this is Rupa from Nepal. So I work with survivors because I used to work with IGM India in Calcutta. So we have rescued a lot of children and we have taken back to Nepal. And then like your frustration, I could relate it. So it was not easy to do the group therapy first, because I'm also a psychologist. Because when they came together, they knew each other, and then somehow their family members were the one who were trafficking one or the other. So it was very difficult for them to open up. So what we did was, metaphor was a very good example. So what we did was, we gave an example and a story of someone who's outside of their circle. And then later on, like one-on-one, we built relationship with one-on-one with child. And then trusted people they would bring in the group. Like, okay, so I want to bring so-and-so in my group. Can we do something? So when we got information, though we are doing therapy from them, but we got information of the family members as well. So for families, we started working with the government as family strengthening program. So we went as a family strengthening program in the village, in the community, not talking about human trafficking. Because if you talk about human trafficking, they will not ask you to come inside. So that's how we did. And then later on, they realized that it's not their fault. It's not their fault, but the circumstances and the situation and the stigma and the norms of like trafficking is normal. So that has happened in the past, and it was the vicious circle of taking revenge that they were taken into trafficking. So then the group, they came together and they realized that it's not their fault. So we worked on the stigma first, the shame first, and it's not the family's fault first, because they're being used as traffickers. They're the brokers, but the kingpin is different. So when they realized that, then they welcomed us in the community. So that's what we did.
Thank you. Anybody here wants to make any comment on this or? Yeah.
Actually, I was the one that wrote that question.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Janice from Mexico. We're visiting here in Asia to see what's happening. I was actually the one that asked the other question about the, not being in a healthy community when the community itself is unhealthy and not trauma-informed. My second question to that was, I just want to see how that looks like. So when you talk about community-based, program aftercare, what are some key people and their roles in a survivor's, aftercare?
It depends on the community. So, for example, I can speak to you about, say, a particular village in India, okay? In West Bengal, not even in India. I mean, even villages are different. But for example, you sit with the survivors and then you're looking at the village map, okay? And you have the power and influence framework. It's a grid. So we draw it on the floor. Imagine there's a square here and it has 4 quadrants, and there's power on axis Y and influence on axis X. And the survivors are now mapping. So who are the people in my village? So the village has, say, about 5,000 people, and very, very small village. So in India, this is, so then in her village, in her locality, she's now mapping people with power and influence. People with low power, high influence. So sometimes there is a club, a club in that village. This club has no positional government power, but 2 or 3 members of that young club, youth club, they have a lot of influence in that community. So we map who are people with high power, high influence. How do we work with them? High power, low influence. So, or interest, forget influence, we do it power, interest. High power, low interest. The person is very much, has a lot of power, can do a lot of things, not interested. Somebody who's very interested, invested in that survivor's growth, has very little power. Now that person, maybe a father, I'm just giving an example, maybe a parent, or some, like I said, a group of nurses we have this cadre called Asha workers, who are nurses in the community. Very high interest, low on power. How do you mobilize this group? Because they are already very invested. How do you increase their power? How can survivors help in increasing their power? So this is just one tool when we map the community, and then we use different strategies for the different groups of stakeholders in your community. And you co-create these strategies with the survivors. The power and interest matrix, it's called. That's one of the tools.
I think we've run out of time.
Yeah, I think your time is up.
There is another question in the app, so you're welcome to respond to other questions in the app afterward. And someone had asked if the slides will be available, and they will be available.
Absolutely. Yes, yes.
So thank you so much, Uma.
Thank you all for coming and listening to me, and I hope some of you will be in touch with us, and we can have conversations then. Torii.